For these 6 people, it was an obsession that consumed their judgment and clouded their sense of danger. But in their quest for likes, shares, and followers, something went horribly wrong. These are the stories of people who died chasing digital validation, right in front of the cameras that were supposed to make them famous. It was July 15, 2014, and the morning sun cast dramatic shadows across the granite cliffs of Yosemite National Park in California. The majestic valley stretched 3,000 feet below Taft Point, where tourists gathered behind safety barriers to capture the breathtaking views. The crisp mountain air carried the scent of pine trees and the distant sound of waterfalls echoing off the canyon walls. Bradley Connor adjusted his phone's camera settings as he surveyed the dramatic landscape that had become his obsession. At 23, the social media influencer had built a following of over 100,000 Instagram users by posting increasingly dangerous photos from cliff edges and mountain peaks across the American West. His compact 5'8" frame belied the fearless attitude that had made him famous for death-defying selfies. The Yosemite trip represented the centerpiece of Bradley's Extreme Summer series, designed to boost his follower count and attract potential sponsorship deals. His girlfriend Sarah had reluctantly agreed to document the adventure, though she'd grown increasingly concerned about his escalating risk-taking behavior. His friends had repeatedly warned him about pushing boundaries too far, but Bradley dismissed their concerns as jealousy over his growing online success. Bradley had been planning this specific shot for weeks, studying satellite images and scouting reports from other influencers who'd attempted similar photos. Park rangers had recently increased warnings about dangerous selfie locations following a series of incidents, but Bradley viewed the restrictions as challenges to overcome rather than safety measures to respect. As Bradley approached the safety barriers at Taft Point, he could feel the adrenaline building in his chest. The dramatic drop-off offered the perfect backdrop for what he envisioned as his most viral post yet. Sarah pleaded with him to stay behind the barriers, but Bradley had already committed to the shot in his mind. Bradley climbed over the metal safety barrier and positioned himself on the narrow granite ledge, his feet finding purchase on the weathered rock surface. He set his phone timer for 10 seconds and placed it on a small outcropping, framing the shot to capture both his silhouette and the vast valley below. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of pine and the distant roar of Yosemite Falls. As the timer counted down, Bradley struck his signature pose with arms outstretched, his back to the 3,000-foot drop. The loose granite beneath his feet shifted slightly, but he maintained his balance through years of experience with precarious positions. Then, in the final second before the camera clicked, disaster struck without warning. Bradley's right foot slipped on a piece of loose rock, sending him stumbling backward toward the edge. His arms windmilled frantically as he fought to regain balance, but momentum and gravity had already taken control. Sarah's screams echoed across the canyon as Bradley disappeared over the cliff face, his body tumbling through the morning air toward the valley floor far below. The phone continued recording, capturing the horrific final moments before automatically uploading to his social media accounts. Other tourists rushed to the edge and called for emergency services, but the remote location and sheer cliff face made immediate rescue impossible. It took search and rescue teams nearly 18 hours to recover Bradley's body from the rocky terrain below. The tragic selfie video went viral posthumously, sparking nationwide debates about social media's influence on risky behavior. Yosemite National Park installed additional barriers and warning signs at popular selfie locations, while Bradley's family established a foundation promoting responsible adventure photography. It was March 8, 2016, and the neon lights of Murphy's Tavern cast colorful reflections across the wet parking lot in rural Texas. The Friday night crowd had thinned to a handful of regulars nursing their final drinks as closing time approached. The smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke hung in the humid air, mixing with the distant sound of country music from the jukebox inside. Jake Morrison wiped his hands on his oil-stained work shirt as he stumbled toward his lifted pickup truck, his movements unsteady after 5 hours of drinking. At 28, the experienced mechanic had built a reputation around town for his automotive expertise and his ability to diagnose any problem. His weathered hands told the story of 15 years spent under the hoods of countless vehicles, from classic muscle cars to modern diesels. The evening had started as a celebration of Jake's promotion to shop foreman at Davidson Auto Repair, but it had devolved into a series of increasingly boastful claims about his mechanical abilities. When his 2008 Ford F-250 refused to start in the parking lot, his drinking buddies saw an opportunity to test his skills. Despite multiple offers to call a tow truck, Jake's pride prevented him from accepting help. Jake had been experiencing financial stress lately, with his ex-wife demanding increased child support payments and his truck requiring expensive repairs. The promotion represented a fresh start, but the pressure to prove himself had been building for months. His friends had grown accustomed to his bragging, but tonight felt different as alcohol amplified his need to demonstrate his expertise. The truck's symptoms suggested a clogged exhaust system, a diagnosis Jake had made countless times in his professional career. However, his blood alcohol level of 0.18 had severely impaired his judgment and coordination. The combination of pride, alcohol, and mechanical overconfidence created a deadly mixture as Jake prepared to crawl under the running vehicle. Jake positioned himself beneath the truck's chassis while the diesel engine idled roughly overhead. The 6.4-liter engine produced significant exhaust fumes that began accumulating in the confined space beneath the vehicle. His friends watched nervously as Jake disappeared under the truck, their concerns growing as minutes passed without communication. The carbon monoxide from the exhaust system mixed with Jake's alcohol-impaired state, creating a rapidly deteriorating situation. His spatial awareness, already compromised by drinking, became further clouded as the colorless, odorless gas displaced oxygen in his bloodstream. Jake's movements became sluggish and uncoordinated as he lost consciousness beneath the running truck. His friends realized something was wrong when they heard the engine revving but couldn't see Jake moving underneath. They called his name repeatedly before finally shutting off the engine and pulling his unconscious body from beneath the vehicle. Jake's skin had taken on a cherry red color characteristic of carbon monoxide poisoning, and his breathing had become shallow and irregular. Emergency responders arrived within 12 minutes and immediately began aggressive resuscitation efforts. Despite advanced life support measures and rapid transport to the regional trauma center, Jake's brain had been deprived of oxygen for too long. He was pronounced dead at 2:47 a.m. from carbon monoxide poisoning and acute alcohol intoxication. The incident became a cautionary tale about the deadly combination of alcohol and automotive repair. Local bars implemented stricter policies about over-serving, while automotive safety courses began including specific warnings about carbon monoxide dangers during repairs. It was January 20, 2018, and the winter wind rattled the windows of the cramped dormitory room at Ohio State University. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the cluttered space where 4 roommates had gathered around a laptop, scrolling through viral challenge videos on YouTube. Empty energy drink cans and pizza boxes littered the desks, evidence of another late-night study session that had devolved into social media entertainment. Tyler Rodriguez adjusted his baseball cap as he watched his roommates debate their next viral video attempt. At 19, the college freshman had struggled to find his place among the more popular students in his dorm, often feeling like an outsider looking in. His outgoing personality masked deep insecurities about fitting in, leading him to increasingly desperate attempts to gain social media attention and peer approval. The Tide Pod Challenge had been circulating on social media for weeks, with teenagers and young adults filming themselves biting into laundry detergent pods for views and likes. Tyler's roommates had been daring each other to attempt various internet challenges, each trying to outdo the others with increasingly dangerous stunts. Despite knowing the risks, Tyler felt pressure to prove he wasn't afraid of the viral dare. Tyler's parents had recently called to warn him about dangerous internet trends after seeing news reports about hospitalizations. His mother had specifically mentioned the detergent pod challenge, pleading with him to use common sense and avoid peer pressure. However, the desire to finally gain respect from his roommates outweighed his parents' concerns and his own better judgment. The brightly colored detergent pods sat innocuously on the shelf above the washing machines in the dormitory basement. Tyler had researched the challenge online, convincing himself that he could bite the pod and spit out the contents before any real damage occurred. His roommates set up their phones to capture multiple angles, planning to edit the footage into a viral video for their YouTube channel. Tyler held the Tide Pod between his fingers, its colorful exterior designed to look appealing, despite containing concentrated chemicals. His roommates counted down from 3 as Tyler raised the pod to his mouth, their cameras recording every moment. The plan was simple: bite, spit, and become internet famous. The moment Tyler's teeth punctured the pod's outer membrane, everything went catastrophically wrong. The concentrated detergent chemicals immediately began burning his mouth and throat, the caustic substances causing severe tissue damage on contact. Instead of being able to spit out the contents, Tyler found himself choking as the chemicals triggered violent muscle spasms in his throat. Tyler's eyes widened in terror as he realized he couldn't expel the toxic substances. The burning sensation spread throughout his mouth and down his esophagus as he began convulsing uncontrollably. His roommates dropped their phones and rushed to help, but Tyler had already lost consciousness as the chemicals entered his bloodstream and began attacking his internal organs. Emergency responders arrived within 8 minutes, but the damage was already extensive. The concentrated chemicals had caused severe burns to Tyler's respiratory system and triggered multiple organ failure. Despite aggressive treatment at the University Medical Center, Tyler Rodriguez was pronounced dead at 3:23 a.m. from chemical poisoning and respiratory failure. The incident sparked nationwide outrage and calls for social media platforms to ban dangerous challenge videos. Tyler's parents became advocates for internet safety education, while YouTube implemented stricter policies against content promoting harmful activities. It was September 3, 2017, and the late afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over the suburban backyard in Phoenix, Arizona. Colorful balloons and streamers decorated the patio where 30 family members and friends had gathered for David and Lisa Chen's gender reveal party. The smell of barbecue mixed with the desert air as guests mingled around tables laden with pink and blue decorations, their excitement building for the big reveal. David Chen adjusted his safety glasses as he made final preparations for the homemade explosive device he'd constructed in his garage. At 31, the expectant father had spent weeks researching creative gender reveal ideas online, determined to create a memorable moment for their first child. His background in construction had given him confidence in his DIY abilities, though he had no experience with pyrotechnics or explosive materials. The elaborate celebration represented months of planning and preparation as David and Lisa prepared to welcome their daughter. David had insisted on building the reveal device himself, despite Lisa's suggestions to hire professionals. The couple had already spent significant money on the party, and David wanted to save costs while creating something personal and unique for their growing family. David's research had led him to various online tutorials and forums discussing homemade explosive devices for gender reveals. He'd purchased commercial-grade powder and metal containers, following instructions he'd found on YouTube and Pinterest. His neighbors had grown accustomed to the sounds of construction coming from his garage, unaware of the dangerous project taking shape inside. The device consisted of a metal pipe filled with pink powder and a homemade fuse system designed to create a dramatic explosion of color. David had tested smaller versions in his backyard, but the final device was significantly larger to ensure visibility for all the party guests. His wife had expressed concerns about the safety, but David assured her that his construction experience made him qualified to handle the project. As the sun began to set, David positioned the device in the center of the backyard, while guests gathered in a semicircle around the designated area. Children sat on blankets in front while adults stood behind them, everyone holding their phones to capture the moment. David's pregnant wife stood nearby, her hands resting on her growing belly as she watched her husband prepare for the reveal. David lit the fuse with a barbecue lighter, then stepped back what he believed was a safe distance. The fuse burned slower than expected, building tension as guests counted down the seconds. When the device finally exploded, the force was far greater than David had calculated, sending metal fragments and debris in all directions across the backyard. A large piece of shrapnel struck David directly in the chest, penetrating his rib cage and causing massive internal bleeding. The explosion's force knocked him backward onto the concrete patio as pink powder settled over the horrified party guests. Children screamed as adults rushed to help, but David's injuries were immediately apparent as blood pooled beneath his body. A registered nurse among the guests immediately began first aid, applying pressure to the wound while someone called 911. David remained conscious for several minutes, asking about his wife and unborn daughter before losing consciousness from blood loss. Despite the nurses' efforts and rapid response from paramedics, David bled out before reaching the hospital. The tragic accident devastated Lisa and traumatized all the party guests, including several children who witnessed the explosion. The incident led to warnings about DIY pyrotechnics and the dangers of homemade explosive devices, while professional party planners began offering safer gender reveal alternatives. It was May 12, 2013, and the humid Miami air carried the sounds of spring break revelry across the crowded beachfront hotels. The 15th floor balcony of the Ocean View Resort offered a spectacular view of the Atlantic Ocean, where dozens of college students celebrated their recent graduation with increasingly daring social media challenges. The smell of sunscreen and salt air mixed with the distant sound of music from the beach parties below. Alex Thompson adjusted his phone's camera angle as he surveyed the narrow balcony railing that had become his target for the ultimate planking photo. At 22, the recent college graduate had spent the week participating in various viral trends with his fraternity brothers, each challenge becoming more extreme as they competed for social media attention. His athletic 6-foot frame and competitive nature had made him the group's unofficial daredevil. The planking trend had exploded across social media platforms, with participants photographing themselves lying face down in increasingly unusual and dangerous locations. Alex had successfully planked on various surfaces throughout the week, from restaurant tables to lifeguard stands. But he wanted to end the trip with something truly spectacular that would generate maximum likes and shares. Alex's friends had been drinking steadily throughout the day, their judgment impaired as they encouraged each other to attempt more dangerous stunts. The group had already posted dozens of photos and videos from their Miami trip, but Alex felt pressure to create content that would stand out among the thousands of similar posts flooding their social media feeds. The hotel balcony railing measured only 4 inches wide and stood 180 feet above the concrete pool deck below. Alex had noticed other guests taking photos from the balcony throughout the week, but none had attempted anything as dangerous as planking on the narrow metal barrier. His friends gathered around with their phones ready, excited to capture what they believed would be the perfect finale to their spring break adventure. Alex climbed over the balcony's safety barrier and carefully positioned himself face down on the narrow railing, his arms extended forward in the classic planking pose. The metal felt warm from the afternoon sun as he balanced his weight, trying to maintain the rigid body position required for the photograph. His friends counted down from 3 as they prepared to capture the moment. A sudden gust of ocean wind caught Alex off guard as he held the planking position. The 15 mph breeze, barely noticeable at ground level, created significant force at the 15th floor height. Alex's grip on the smooth metal railing began to slip as the wind pushed against his extended body, creating a sail effect that pulled him away from the building. Alex's friends watched in horror as he struggled to maintain his balance on the narrow railing. His fingers scrambled for purchase on the smooth metal surface, but the combination of wind, gravity, and his precarious position made recovery impossible. Within seconds, Alex lost his grip completely and fell backward into the empty air, his body tumbling through the afternoon sky toward the concrete below. The impact was instantaneous and fatal as Alex struck the pool deck with tremendous force. Hotel guests screamed as they witnessed the accident, while his friends on the balcony called desperately for emergency services. Despite immediate response from hotel security and paramedics, Alex Thompson was pronounced dead on impact from massive trauma. The hotel implemented stricter balcony safety measures and increased security patrols following the incident. Alex's death became a widely cited example of the dangers of extreme social media challenges, leading to the rapid decline of the planking trend. It was August 18, 2014, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the suburban driveway in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, had reached fever pitch across social media, with celebrities and ordinary citizens alike dumping buckets of ice water over their heads to raise awareness for the disease. The sound of lawnmowers and children playing echoed through the quiet neighborhood as families enjoyed the final weeks of summer. Marcus Williams wiped sweat from his forehead as he surveyed the elaborate setup he'd constructed for his Ice Bucket Challenge video. At 27, the construction worker had been nominated by several co-workers and felt obligated to participate in the viral phenomenon that had captured the nation's attention. His muscular 6'2" frame reflected years of physical labor, while his calloused hands showed the wear of countless construction projects across central Pennsylvania. The challenge had evolved from simple bucket dumps to increasingly elaborate productions, as participants tried to outdo each other's creativity. Marcus had spent his weekend constructing a pulley system using a 12-foot aluminum ladder and a large metal bucket capable of holding 5 gallons of ice water. His construction background had given him confidence in rigging systems, though he'd overlooked the overhead power lines running just 8 feet above his driveway. Marcus's wife, Jennifer, had offered to help with the setup, but he'd insisted on handling the project himself as a matter of pride. The couple had been struggling financially since Marcus's hours were cut at the construction company, and he saw the viral video as a potential boost to his small side business doing home repairs. His plan involved climbing the ladder while holding the heavy bucket, creating a spectacular waterfall effect that would impress his followers and potential customers. As Marcus prepared for his video, he positioned his phone on a tripod to capture the full spectacle. His wife watched nervously from the kitchen window, having expressed concerns about the proximity of the power lines throughout the weekend. The overhead electrical cables carried 7,200 volts and were positioned exactly 6 feet above the ladder's maximum reach. Marcus climbed the aluminum ladder while gripping the metal bucket filled with ice water. The combination of metal ladder, metal bucket, and electrical conductivity created a perfect storm of dangerous conditions. As he reached the top of the ladder, Marcus raised the bucket above his head to create maximum impact for the video. The moment the metal bucket made contact with the overhead power line, 7,200 volts of electricity surged through the metal container and down the aluminum ladder. Marcus's body became part of the electrical circuit as the current traveled through him to the ground, causing immediate cardiac arrest and severe electrical burns. The massive electrical shock threw him backward off the ladder, his body convulsing as he struck the concrete driveway. Jennifer witnessed the accident through the kitchen window and immediately called 911 while running to her husband's aid. Marcus's body showed severe electrical burns where the current had entered and exited, while his heart had stopped beating from the electrical shock. Smoke rose from his clothing and the metal ladder, which had been welded to the bucket by the electrical arc. Paramedics arrived within 7 minutes and immediately began advanced cardiac life support, but the electrical damage to Marcus's heart and nervous system was too severe. Despite 30 minutes of aggressive resuscitation efforts, Marcus Williams was pronounced dead at 4:23 p.m. from electrocution and cardiac arrest caused by high-voltage electrical contact. The power company faced scrutiny for inadequate clearance warnings around residential power lines, while the ALS Association added safety guidelines to their Ice Bucket Challenge materials. Marcus's tragic death became a cautionary tale about everyday electrical hazards in residential areas. Thanks for watching. Just when you think you've seen how dangerous the quest for online attention can become, we're just getting started. Click the next video that will leave you questioning whether any amount of likes and shares is worth risking everything.